Okay, can everyone see that on their screen? Should be a big map of New Hampshire. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm Tara Schroeder. I'm the education coordinator for Green Mountain Conservation Group, and we're a 7-town watershed organization located in East Central New Hampshire and Carroll County. And we do research, education, advocacy, and land conservation within our watershed. And our mission is to protect the natural resources in our watershed, and we have a focus on water protection. The background for this program tonight, I'll just share briefly with you before I introduce Tom. The background of this program started with a very special volunteer of ours, Mark Longley, who brought the Radon Library program that Tom founded to my awareness. Um, Mark has been a volunteer for many, many years and on GMCG's board, and he continues to help raise awareness about protecting drinking water quality and private well testing, and we collaborate very often on that program. He does a lot of work in his own town of Sandwich to raise awareness about arsenic and radon, two common natural contaminants that we have elevated levels of in our area. As you can see from the map here of radon levels in New Hampshire, we're in that darker blue shade within our watershed towns of Eaton, Effingham, Freedom, Madison, Ossipee, Sandwich, and Tamworth. So Mark brought this program to my awareness, and we have a rapport with libraries like the Cook Library. Thank you for hosting tonight, Mary. And it seemed like a really good way to allow people to test for this contaminant in the air and raise awareness because, of course, in the air, I think it's more of a concern, a health concern. Um, and then that opens the way for, testing in your water and making sure that those levels are within reasonable limits too. So this program started for us in 2023, so fairly new, but it immediately took off, and I'm really glad that it did. So we have 8 libraries right now that are participating in the program in our area. And we also have Green Mountain participating in the program. We each have a kit with a radon meter that looks like this, an Airthings Corinthium radon meter. And the kit that you can check out, just like a book, and learn all about your radon levels in your house and test and keep it for a couple weeks or so. And if you need to mitigate, there's information about how to do that. So in the past year and a half that the program's been in our local libraries, I can say from my personal experience, we've had a few instances where, we've had elevated radon levels at our office that we didn't know about until we were able to test for it. And we were able to mitigate for that. And I'll show you in the next slide what that mitigation system looks like. So really, really thankful to Tom for raising awareness about this issue and getting it out there. And I'm actually in the process of testing my home, and it seems like we have elevated levels here as well. So want to get a hold of that and get a handle of that real soon here. So I'm sure Tom's going to get into what radon is and all the health implications for elevated levels. But I just want to say thank you to Tom tonight for sharing this program with us and this information, getting the word out. Very important message to test as the only way to make sure that your air is safe to breathe and your water is safe to drink. I want to thank Mark Longley, who's here and has helped to bring this program to our area and, reached out to Tom initially and Green Mountain Conservation Group to spread awareness and spread this program to our local libraries, and the Tamworth Foundation for helping to get this program off the ground in our libraries in Tamworth. Just if folks have questions or want more information, you're welcome to email me. I put my email address on the slide here, education@gmcg.org, and visit our website, gmcg.org, for upcoming events and programs. We have a lot going on this winter and spring. Water quality programs, snowshoeing events. Let's see what else. Big night, all kinds of stuff. So, we had to mitigate at our offices. We had levels that we tested with the meter and with the state. There's a program where you can test at the DHHS state lab for free right now. And so as like a double check on the meter, we did that, and we had levels of nearly 10. And I'm sure Tom's going to talk about the levels there and what's safe and what's not, but we brought that down to below 2 with this system that was put in last summer. And so that's great because we have our water quality lab in the basement, which is where we had really high levels. And then our offices and where our workstations are in the first level. So still elevated levels up there. But it works. And we're so glad and grateful that we were able to address this. And I hope that, for folks who are watching this program tonight, you can take matters into your own hands, take one of these kits out of your local library, find out more about your levels in your home, and make sure it's safe for you and your families. All right, so now I would like to introduce Tom. And okay, I stop sharing. So thank you again, Tom, for being here tonight. Tom's the founder of radonlibrary.com. And his story goes that the first 5 years of his children's lives, he was unaware that they were exposed to dangerously high levels of radon. And radon is a health hazard that we know increases the risk of lung cancer with long-term exposure. Also stomach cancer if you're exposed by ingesting it through your water. So nationally, about 1 in 15 homes has elevated radon levels. In New Hampshire, the situation is even more concerning. And as you saw with that map that I just shared, we have approximately 3 in 10 homes affected. In our area, maybe 5 out of 10. So a lot of homes being impacted. Tom, is there anything else you want to share about yourself? I know you mitigated at your home and you wanted to have the shock factor of sharing exactly how high your levels were.
Yes. I will, I'll do a little bit more introduction through my program. No, but that was a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Tara.
Sure.
All right. So I will take over and I will go ahead and share my screen. All right, I am sharing my screen, and unfortunately, right now I can't see any of you. So, Tara, can I get a verbal that you can see my screen right now?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, Radon, what you need to know. All right. So I'm going to keep the thank yous shorter because Tara did such a great job on it. But my list is very similar to hers. I really want to thank Mary and Cook Memorial Library for hosting us tonight and for putting this on. I think of the work that I do as a hub and spoke model in that there's only one of me. I can only bring the message of the importance of testing your home for radon so far. It's through work with libraries and through work with people like Tara at Green Mountain Conservation Group, hub and spoke. I was able to work with them, and then they were able to extend my outreach exponentially beyond what I could do. Nearly half of the radon detectors that I've been able to help get into libraries is in thanks to Green Mountain Conservation Group, and in thanks to Mark Longley, who also Tara was thanking. He reached out to me very early on when I had approached the libraries to see if they would be interested in adding one, and it was through his due diligence and verification that this was a good program that we were able to do this, and that's why we're all here tonight. So I really want to thank everybody. This is a community effort. It's not just me. I could not do this all on my own. So thank you very much. I'm going to do something a little bit different than maybe some other presentations that you may have seen in the past. And that is, I'm going to start with my last slide. So this is the last slide you will see from me tonight. I'm going to go through a bunch more, and I'm going to come back to this one because this is the most important thing I could ask of you from this presentation, is to test your home for radon and then to tell a friend about it. Going back to that hub and spoke model. If you test your home, that's great. That's amazing. But if you test your home and then you convince a neighbor or someone else to do so, that again extends that community outreach and we get more people testing their homes for radon. You'll see this QR code throughout. It's kind of gimmicky and is more for presentations I was doing in place, but this goes right to my website, radonlibrary.com, and it has basic information about radon mitigation. And most importantly, it tells you exactly how to get a free radon test kit from New Hampshire DHHS, which you can do. But you can also go down to your library, and if it's available tomorrow, you can go pick up that radon detector tomorrow and you can start testing your home. So the two main takeaways, you can forget all of the geology, all of the numbers, everything that I go over tonight. If you don't remember that tomorrow morning, but you remember, oh, I should test my home tomorrow morning, and you take action on it, that's the most important thing I can ask of you. So this is who I am. This is me and my family. We're on top of Mount Major. We love spending time outside. I was just actually up in your neck of the woods last weekend, enjoying some of the wind that the entire state of New Hampshire is seeing right now. I was up on Sandwich Dome. We spent very little time up on Sandwich Dome, but we love spending time outside, myself, my wife, and my two young kids. But we can't always spend time outside. Most of us spend most of our time indoors. And
no, I don't remember that view from Sandwich Dome. It looks like rap.
is everybody still seeing this? We're good?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I have this is a strange view that I have. I can't see any of you right now. So, all right, I'm going to continue on. So, what we need to do is we need to talk. We're here tonight to talk about radon. So, I'm telling you, test your home for radon, but you need to have a little bit of information about what radon is. So, I'm going to list out some stats, some facts about radon, and then we're going to kind of break this down a little bit. So, radon, it's a gas. It is naturally occurring. It cannot be smelled and it cannot be seen. Well, up until that point, there's nothing really special about it. I can name a whole host of other gases that fit that description: oxygen, nitrogen, and that's fine. We need oxygen and nitrogen. It's an inert gas. We're just breathing oxygen and nitrogen in and out, and it doesn't do anything for us. So what is it then about radon? What other characteristics about radon are we going to add in here that makes it a concern to us? So like oxygen, nitrogen can't be seen, naturally occurring, can't be smelled. I'm going to connect it to another gas that you might be a little bit more familiar with. I myself, as a homeowner, I have my smoke detector, and I also have a carbon monoxide detector. Hopefully, most people here, we rely on heating our homes, maybe have a furnace down in the basement. You hopefully have a carbon monoxide detector in your home, because carbon monoxide is a gas that can kill you. Radon can also cause you harm. Now, it's done in a little bit different way, though. And whereas carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas, and exposed to carbon monoxide, you could acutely die overnight in your sleep. That's why you have that detector. Radon is a radioactive gas, and it is that radioactive piece that is concerning for us and why we need to test our homes. And it is a hazard to our health. Now, it is not acutely hazardous to your health like carbon monoxide. It's not going, if you breathe high levels of radon for one night, you're going to probably be okay. I should have stated, and I'm going to put this in here, I am not a radon expert. So I just put that there. I am a radon advocate. So I try to do everything that I'm saying here. I try to do it based in science and what is available from EPA and New Hampshire DHHS. But I'm not a radon expert. I'm just here and as an advocate to get people to test. But a night of carbon monoxide could be fatal to you. So it's not acutely harmful to you, but it's long exposure to radon that can cause an issue to your health. And it's breathing the elevated levels of radon over a long time period can lead to lung cancer. Now, it is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the US, and it is second to smoking. If you're smoking cigarettes, that is a risk that you are accepting with that smoking, that it could lead you to it. But as a human smoking, you know that you are smoking and you know you are taking on that risk. Breathing in radon, you do not know if you are breathing in radon unless you have tested your home for it and you know how much of that radon you are breathing in. So where does radon come from? It comes from the ground. It comes from the, I'm going to try to keep this as high level as possible, but it comes from the decay of radioactive materials in rocks, similar to granite. And as the granite state, we have a lot of granitic bedrock. And there are particular hotspots for areas that have higher levels of radon. And unfortunately, Carroll County, where all of you live, is a hotspot for it. And you have elevated levels of that radon, as well as Rockingham County, where I live. We have a lot of radon coming up from the ground. Now, it is everywhere. If you go outside, even on a cold, windy night tonight, you're going to probably be breathing a little bit of radon. The ground is frozen, so maybe not too much, but during a summer on a nice warm day, there is going to be some radon gas coming up from your lawn outside, but it quickly gets into the atmosphere and the levels are not hazardous. Where it becomes hazardous is if that radon gas seeps into your home. Now, this is a very standard image. There's many images like this. And I like this one, though, because it shows many of the different ways that radon can get into your house. If you have some cracks in your basement, if you have an old stone basement and there's some exposure to some soil down below, there are homes that have bedrock that come up into their basement. If you have a sump that is open to help mitigate water issues in your basement, that can lead to radon coming in. And now, importantly, in the Carroll County area, and this is how I ended up getting in contact with Mark at first, was in water. Now, I'm not going to speak a lot about the water tonight, and I'm not an expert on radon. I know more about air than water, so I definitely don't want to speak out of line on water in radon in water. But I know enough to know. I know enough that needs to be tested in both places. It needs to be tested in your air, but it also needs to be tested in your water. Specifically, in the water is that when gases are in water and that water warms up, they naturally want to degas, meaning release the gases that that have been in them. So if you're standing in the shower and you're taking a nice warm shower, that water's warming up, there's radon coming out of that solution and you're breathing that in the shower. So testing your water for radon is as important as testing your air for radon as well. Now, radon is hazardous to our health, but it depends on how much you're breathing and how long you are breathing it for. And it's a good thing that a little bit of it is not going to cause much harm because we're all breathing it right now. I saw Tara when we were speaking earlier. She had her electronic radon detector, and she was showing me that there are some numbers in her home. And if you were to take, I have a radon detector in my basement. And even though my home has been mitigated, I'll get to my own personal story in a little bit. Even though my home has been mitigated and we have a whole mitigation system, which is taking care of it all, it's still there. We're still breathing in a little bit of radon, but it is not nearly as much as we were breathing when we first found out that we had elevated levels of radon in our home. And I'm going to keep hammering this home. The only way to know the level of radon in your home is through testing. Testing is simple. It is free and there's no reason to not do it, then only at that point can you take action on the information that you have about your home. So let's talk a little bit about radon in New Hampshire. I already mentioned radon as the granite state. We have elevated levels of radon. Nationally, you can see it's difficult to see the labels down below, but using the general, red is bad, yellow is in the middle, and green is okay. Take a look here, and a lot of this is based off of the underlying geology. So over in the northern Rocky Mountains, there is a lot of radon there. And then here up in northern New England as well, New Hampshire and Maine, we also have elevated levels of radon. Now, statistically, if we have, statistically, across the US, it's 6% of homes will have an elevated level of radon that the EPA dictates that you should take steps to mitigate that problem in your home. 1 in 15 homes. Now, that is an average. You're going to have places like, we go back, places like Florida down here, a lot of limestone. You're probably not going to have many issues down there. But mixed in, you're going to have higher states like, say, New Hampshire. Now, in New Hampshire, it's 30% of homes, 3 in every 10 homes are going to have potentially have elevated levels of radon. Now, again, thinking about that Florida example, there's going to be places in New Hampshire that are going to be higher and lower. Myself, I grew up over in Cheshire County, just outside of Keene, New Hampshire. And after we found out our elevated levels of radon here, I live in Rockingham County down near Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We had very high levels of radon in our home. I tested my childhood home where my mother still lives outside of Keene, nothing. Or there was a little bit, but barely anything over there. So there are hot spots. And I have a couple of stats up here. This is older data than what Tara just showed. This is from a document that went up through 2011. New Hampshire DHHS has come out with a newer one, but it's very, very similar. And this is statistics of if the town that you live in and the likelihood that your home is going to have radon. If you're living in, it looks like Sandwich might be the best spot to be living if you're living up in Carroll County. A little bit smaller chance there. But if you're living in any of these other homes, it's looking like 50% chance that your home is going to have it. So if you don't have elevated levels of radon in your home after you test, after the presentation tonight, you go home tomorrow, you're like, I'm going to test my home. You test your home and it doesn't have elevated levels of radon. That's great. But tell your neighbor, because the chances are they might have it over there. So it's 50% chance. And I think we're just about the same down here in the seacoast, down in Stratham. Now, it does vary by county. And if we take a look through here, we have Carroll County up here, and across Carroll County, it's at 41% of homes have elevated levels of radon. Coas County, also high up there. Rockingham County, where I am down here, 36%. Whereas Cheshire County, this is where I grew up, 15%. We had a low chance down here in southwest New Hampshire. So how do you test for radon? So there's multiple ways to test for radon. And what I've done with my radonlibrary.com program that I've started was I have worked with 15 to 20 libraries to help them add these electronic radon detectors to their homes. In the bottom right corner here, this radon detector, it's very easy to use. I'll provide a link to a few things after the presentation tonight. But one of the links I'll provide you is I put together a 5-minute YouTube video of how to set up this Air Things. That's the brand name of this electronic detector. Very simple. Use a toothpick to reset it, and you set it up in your basement or your lowest habitable level of your home. And within 24 hours, it will start giving you information. I'll explain what those numbers mean in a little bit. A little bit more complex is this test kit right up here. And this is one where you can get for free from New Hampshire DHHS. You fill out a form and they will send you one of these in the mail. You follow the instructions on there. It's not too difficult to do. And you take that and you put that in the lowest habitable place in your home, basement or your first floor of your home. And you leave it there for 24 to 72 hours. You package it up, you put it in the mail, you send it for free, no cost involved at all, over to this lab, and they will test it for you and then send you back your number. Those are great, and I highly recommend them. I have used them in my home. I used it to verify the numbers I was getting on this electronic test because I wanted to make sure what what it was saying was true. I don't know if I always trust digital sources of data, but it did verify that for me. The downside of using this one test is that it's one data point in time. You test your home once. Now, levels of radon in your home can change based on the weather outside. If you have a high pressure system coming through, if you have a low pressure system coming through, you're supposed to keep all the windows closed, but it's been really cold recently. If it warms up to 50 degrees, 60 degrees next week, and we're like, I'm going to pop the windows open just to get some fresh air in here, that's going to change it. This time of the year, January, December, January, especially on a cold, windy day like this. I don't know if it's windy, still windy up where you guys are right now, but it is just howling down here. We have our house buttoned up tight, and we want to make sure we keep all that heat in the house. This is the time of year that radon levels are going to increase in your home because we have everything buttoned up. We don't have those other sources of fresh air coming in to mix and to get rid of some of that radon. So that's why I like these electronic tests, is that it will give you a 1-day average, a 7-day average, and a long-term average. I've been having mine running in my basement for probably a year now, so I can look at it. I'm not going to go as far. If you want to, I think you can plug these things in and you can get the data and you can put it on a spreadsheet, so you could look at it that way. But it's a very nice display, very easy to use. So 2 different ways you can easily test your home for radon. These are some of the communities with those radon detectors. I think most, again, I said most of about 50% of this isn't all the way up to date. I do have some other libraries here, but a lot of these libraries are have their detectors because of work with Green Mountain Conservation. So again, thank you so much. You're doing a lot of the good work for me, and I really appreciate it.
Tom, I would just interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
I would add Effingham Library also has a detector.
Okay, thank you.
Green
I will
has
update.
one,
I
and
will update my slide.
Bartlett Library does too.
Bartlett as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
So Bartlett and Effingham, I will update this slide. Thank you very much.
And Madison.
And Madison, hold on. That's too much information for me to remember. I'm going to write this down. Madison, Bartlett, and
Effingham.
Thank you for interrupting. That's great. I'm going to make sure that information gets in there.
No problem.
All right. So whereas my main drive for tonight for everybody is just test your home, test your home, test your home. Please just do it. And then only then can you make an educated decision. Well, you have to have a little bit of information about what the data is saying to be able to make an educated decision. So radon is measured in a unit called PCI per L, which is picocuryliters per liter, picocuries per liter. I'm not going to get into what that means, but looking at the numbers themselves and how this is measured is that if you are return on your electronic detector or on one of the one-time use radon tests, if it comes back to you and you're 0 to 2, then you're all set. The EPA recommends testing once every 2 years. Radon levels can change in the home, especially if you use one of those one-time use ones. If it was a low pressure system, or if it was a warm, sunny day, that might change the level, and you might want to test again. It doesn't hurt to test again, and the EPA has listed every 2 years. If there's seismic activity in your area, that shifts some bedrock, if there's a new development that goes in. So there's other things that can do it. So testing your home once every 2 years, since most of you will probably have access to the libraries and have those electronic detectors, just put a reminder in your phone, say once every 2 years, just test my home for radon. I'll go check this thing out, bring it home, test it. I'm all set. We're good. 2 to 4. If you're within the 2 to 4 range, it is recommended that you keep monitoring. And the keep monitoring is, again, because of the variation that can happen over time with weather, with windows opening and closing. And you want to make sure if it's in the 2 to 4, if it stays down near the 2, then okay. Or if it drops down below that 2, or then you're probably fine. But if it's up towards that 4, you might want to bump yourself up into that next level, which is 4 plus, which is if you get 4 plus picocuries per liter, then the EPA recommends that you take action. What is that action? We'll get to that in a little bit. It involves a mitigation system that Tara showed us some images of a little bit earlier. And here's my one slide that I put in here. I actually just updated this today because I talk so much, whenever I've done these presentations in the past, I talk so much about testing your air for radon, but I would be remiss to not give more information about testing for water. I already alluded to it a little bit. Water should also be tested for radon. Now, I don't know much about the levels. Mark might know more about this and be happy to throw it over to him if he has a little bit more information. But what I found on New Hampshire DHHS's website today was saying that if your level is above 10,000 picocuries per liter in water in solution, so don't be too alarmed by the fact that it's 10 much larger than in air. But if you're higher than 10,000 in your water, that you should look into getting a mitigation system for your water system, not just for the air, but for the water system. Or if your level is 2,000 or higher in your water, and your air is greater than 4, then you should get a mitigation system in. Now, you do not need to remember these numbers. Don't worry yourself about these numbers. One of the additional links that I'm going to be sending out in the chat tonight is to New Hampshire DHHS website, which is phenomenal. They just recently came out with a new one. I think within the past year, they've come up with a new website for radon in New Hampshire and has all of this information there. My website too, radonlibrary.com, has a lot of this information as well. Not about the water, but about the air. But if you go to DHHS's website, they will have the information about water mitigation. Mark, do you have anything to add about water mitigation?
We used to test water, radon in water as the first start, the first look. And when we did our well testing for other parameters, it was an additional cost, not a great cost. I think it's $20 at the state lab. But when the free testing came out from the state and from the Corentium handheld radon detectors at the libraries, we're using that as the first look. And if we have an appreciable level in the air, which is a more hazardous condition, then we go back and also test the water.
That's great. Yeah. The fact that it's free and easy and you don't need to send it away from the lab, you can just get the detector and just set it up in your home. It's just such an easy thing to do. So that's great. All right. So a little bit more about radonlibrary.com. Why are we all here tonight? Why are we doing this? I mentioned early on speaking with Mark about I had reached out to a library and then they had contacted Mark and said, Mark, is this a good idea? Should we be doing this? And then Mark and I went back and forth a couple times. It was through that relationship that we're all here in this Zoom talk tonight. And I really appreciate that. But taking it one step further back, why did I start radonlibrary.com? I am not a radon expert. I work in technology. I sit behind a computer and I punch keys in a not-for-profit down in the Seacoast area. So why am I talking about radon? Why am I doing this in my free time? And the real story is I don't want anybody else to suffer the story that I had to go through. And to start this off, I'm going to show you guys a short little video clip here. Show off. They're still cute, but they're still not this small. Here's a short little video of my kids. Hopefully the audio works. So did everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So that was my children, and it was my eldest on the left here. He's just about 2 years old, and my youngest here at weeks old. Being very cute. That's what you see in this picture, right? You see two cute kids. What you don't see in this picture is that they are breathing over 10 times the level of radon that the EPA states needs action taken on. They're breathing over 40 PCI per L in this picture, and they breathe that much radon for the first 5 to 6 years of their lives. When I bought my home, and I went back to the documentation and went back to the contract that we signed for our home when we purchased it. My wife and I have been living here for 10 years. My children have been living in it for 5 or 6 years. I went back and I looked at it and I saw, we did not test our home for radon when we moved in. It is not required to test your home for radon when you purchase it. I don't know why we didn't test our home for radon. I don't know if it was because of the market at the time that we just wanted to quickly get the sale. We didn't want anything to hang it up, but we didn't test our home for radon. And it was only because I was over at a friend's house helping him with a project, and I saw that he had one of those little electronic radon detectors sitting in his basement because he had just put in a radon mitigation system in his home. And I just asked him. I said, "Can I borrow that from you?" Let me play one more time. Cute smile at the end there. And I asked him if I could borrow it. So I brought it home and I set it up in my basement. I went to bed that night. And at that point, I had learned enough about radon over the course of a couple of days. I was like, oh, I'll set this up and I'll set it up and we'll look at it in the morning and it'll be below 4. It'll be, I don't know, it'll be 0 to 2, and then we'll be all set. I went down that next morning and we were at 40 PCI per L. I thought it was a mistake. I didn't trust the detector, so I reset it with a toothpick, set it back up. Next morning, came down again. It was at 40, 42 PCI per L. I ended up buying my own radon detector. I set the two of them up next to each other. I got one of those one-time use kits. I set that up. I sent it into the lab. 40, 40, 40. It kept coming back. We had never tested our homes, so we did not know what we were breathing. I did not know what my children were breathing. It wasn't until probably 2 or 3 months later, after finding that high level of radon, that it finally hit me to even be concerned about myself. I was just thinking about the kids. It's like that they had been doing that at nobody's fault, but we didn't know what we were breathing. So I started radonlibrary.com to help other people understand that testing is free, it's easy, and you need to do it to know how much radon you are breathing in your home. I mentioned the 3 months that it took me to finally start thinking about myself. Up until that point, we were in a very unique situation. Now, as far as I know from other radon mitigation systems when they're installed, maybe Tara can speak to this a little bit more at Green Mountain Conservation, that they come in, the companies, there's certified, you have to be a certified mitigation specialist in New Hampshire, and they will come in and they will set up a mitigation system in your home, and it looks like this. It's just a giant fan. What it does is they'll punch a hole of in your basement floor. They put some PVC pipe in there, and it'll suck that air out from below your slab before it can get into your home, and then it vents it out safely above roofline, and then it goes and mixes with the atmosphere, and at that point, there's no issue with it. Mine was a special situation. It took about 3 months for them to finally do it. I worked with a great company, and they promised me beforehand that they would get me below 4. It took them many, many visits to do it. At one point, I ended up finding the source. It was a pipe that went out to our well. I put a little electronic radon detector right into that pipe to see if anything was coming in through there. And it was Christmas morning. I remember it was 3 years ago, Christmas morning. I went down and checked it, and very odd Christmas present to myself, but I found our source of radon in our home because I found that we had over 350 PCI per L coming in through that that pipe that was going out to our well. Interestingly, we also had our water tested. Nothing, barely any in our water. But because of the way that our well was set up, and because it goes down through some bedrock, the source of our radon, it was coming up our well and getting sucked into our home. So we ended up having the mitigation system set up on that pipe going out to our well, and we're now below 1 in our home, and we've been below 1 in our home for the past 3 years. But it took a long 3 months of time to get there, and only at that point did I really start thinking beyond my children. I started thinking, who else can I help? And that's where Radon Library came from. I have worked with 20 plus libraries. I put this presentation on a dozen times, and every person who I can help just realize that you just need to test your home to do so that you can make sure, verify that your family is breathing safe air. That's all I ask from this. This is not my home, but this is very similar to what my mitigation system looks like on the outside. Familiarity process. It's from a psychological standpoint. Once you see something, once you know what something is, you start seeing it all over the place. We got a Prius years ago, and as soon as I got a Prius, I started driving around. I was like, wow, there's Priuses all over the place. Now, the Priuses had always been there, but I never taken note of looking for them. Now that I know what radon mitigation systems look at, I can see 2 of my neighbors have them. I ask you, when you go for your walk tomorrow, when you are driving around town this weekend, just take a look at people's homes and see if you see any of these, because this is what a mitigation system looks like on older homes. Newer homes can have them pre-built in, and a lot of houses, construction companies are now pre-building these into their homes. But if you're having your home retrofitted, this is what it's going to look like on the outside. Cost to fix your home. Don't quote me on this, especially with inflation. These numbers were before inflation took off 3-4 years ago. But when we had our mitigation system put in, it cost us about $1,500. Again, the company that we worked with, they were great. It was a one-time fee, and they said, we will fix it for that price. I don't think they ended up profiting on us at all because they had to come out so many times. But again, our situation, I think, was very unique in that they had to come out that many times. I think most people, it's a simpler fix where they come to your home one time, put that in, they'll test your home before, they'll test your home after to make sure that your radon levels have come down. And here's that last slide that I already showed you at the beginning. And again, if you can test your home for radon, I would appreciate it. And if you could tell a friend about radon, I would also appreciate that too. Now, I have one last thing that I'd like to show everybody, not in my slide deck. It's actually going to be a live display from the website. This is one of the links that I will share out in the chat right here shortly. This is ArcGIS is a great mapping software, and they have this thing called Story Maps, which allows companies, organizations, people, government entities to create stories out of maps. And I just found this today, and I love maps. In my former life, I was a cartographer. I loved making maps, and I found this, and I was like, I love this. So this is one of the sliding maps here. And if we go back and forth, I'll go a little bit slower in case there's any lag. If we go all the way to the right, this is indoor radon tests over EPA action level of 4 PCI per L. So it's a little difficult to see, but up here in Carroll County, we're going to see a lot of the dark blue colors. That's that 45% and above. So my number is a little bit older, but 50%. But if we slide to the left, this is what I just found today. And Mark, I don't know if you've seen this, but this is, they might have this as a static map, but I've never seen it in this sliding one. Here, probability of radon in groundwater over the New Hampshire DES advisory level of 2,000 PCI per L. And if we look up here, we're going to see this giant blob of red right in this area. This is going to be a very high concentration of individuals who might have high levels of radon in their water. Now, down where I am in the seacoast, we don't have high levels of radon in our water, which correlates with what I found with my water test. But if we go to the right, what we see is we still have high levels of radon in our air. So I will share out this link right here, and you can go and you can slide this back and forth and have fun with it. You can also kind of see, and it is dependent on where you live. So looking at Tamworth specifically, if you are in southern Tamworth, it looks like you're going to have a lower level of chance of having high levels of radon in your water. But if you're in northern Tamworth here, then it looks like you're going to have a higher level. And then in some of these other towns here that are further north in Carroll County, you also might have a higher chance of having elevated levels of radon in your water. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now. And I would love to know if there are any questions. If not, that's okay. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now. Yeah, Mark.
I'd just like to let everyone know that in New Hampshire, before selling a property, the seller must provide the buyer with a statement about radon and radon testing in the house. And this is, I think, very important. And I think we're looking at legislation to make this this testing required for other contaminants, and some are like arsenic. So we're on the right track there.
Great.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you mitigate water?
Mark, I'm going to throw that one over to you.
I don't know of anyone in Sandwich that has had to mitigate their water. We've had a lot of air systems, and I'm not sure just what the program is for water mitigation, but I will look into that.
Thank you.
I have a question. Yes. My question is, and I know you're not a radon expert. My question is more, how do you find skilled radon mitigators? Because I've been working through this problem, and a few years ago, I had somebody come by when our levels were still below 4, but they were up 2.5 to 3.5. So I just wanted to see what a mitigator might do. And he came in and said, oh, he could do it, but he didn't have the right drill because our home was built in the late 1700s.
Yep.
And he couldn't get through the beam to go to the outside. So didn't do anything. Well, then another reason that radon can go up, I guess, is we've been doing a lot of insulating.
Yes.
And the levels have slowly been going up. So I'm in the process of testing now. I had one fellow come by, and we've got a drain, and then there's another hole in the basement. He said he could cover those up and would see how that goes. But then I had spoken with a gentleman who's retired out of Laconia, and he's very knowledgeable. And he was saying that unless you block all places around your basement, you can fill all the holes you want, and you're still going to be getting radon. And we have one part of our house has a crawl space. When we did the insulating, they could not get into the dirt crawl space in the far corner.
Yep.
And in the middle of the house was another area that they couldn't get to. So this fellow says he's not sure a mitigation system would work.
Yeah.
And I've got these other fellows saying, oh, we can fix it. But it sounds like you had a did you have a real guarantee or just a verbal guarantee?
We had a contractual guarantee.
Okay.
But that might be dependent on, they come out, they look at it, and they assess the situation first to see, because our home is 1960s, like just a standard ranch, 1960s ranch. So it might be situational how they did that. I did just drop a couple links in the chat. One of them is for the New Hampshire DHHS radon map I showed. Another one is for my website, radonlibrary.com. And then the third one that I dropped there was mitigation experts. It's a website, certifiedradarnpros.org/New Hampshire. And on that page there, it lists out certified radon professionals and where they are located. So you might look through that list and see if there's someone who you haven't contacted, but make sure that they are certified.
Yeah, I did use that list. So
Okay, you
I'm
did use
familiar
that
with
one. Okay.
But I'll have to look. I guess I'll have to have more. It's really hard when you've already got two people that you know you probably shouldn't be trusting. And
Yes.
now I've got to keep looking, and these are certified people.
Yeah. It's counterintuitive. We want to keep our homes buttoned up as well as we can to be energy efficient, and we did that. We had 2 energy efficient projects gone on our house to add extra insulation all over the place, but that just buttoned up our house so much so that anything that gets in has a harder time getting out.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And Catherine, we do have some feedback from some of the folks that have had to mitigate for radon in the area. And we've had good reports, bad reports, and we can talk if you'd like a recommendation.
That'd be great. Thanks,
Yeah,
Mark.
I can share who we've used at Green Mountain and who I'm working with right now for my home, and who's also done another person's home in Madison, and for decent price too. I think the home in Madison was around 700. Our work at Green Mountain to mitigate was 1,400, bigger space to mitigate for. So, yeah.
If you could share that with Mark, then he could share it with me. Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, and we should keep a list up for people because these questions do come up. And back to Jerry regarding radon in water. Jerry, do you know that you do have a high level, or is it just a general question?
I don't know, but I'm thinking also of a family place, which is got an old farmhouse sitting on a ledge, and I'm sure it's got issues.
Yeah.
One comment on drains in the slab, you can buy a radon drain, which is simply a drain with a rubber ball that sits in the bottom of the drain in the pipe. And if there's water, the rubber ball raises so the drain works for water. When it's dry, the ball drops down and plugs the hole, keeps the radon out theoretically.
Interesting.
Yep.
In general, to remove radon from water, usually there's a tank installed that bubbles air to degas that and bring the radon out with the air that it escapes. So I don't think it's real expensive, but again, I haven't had to deal with that with anyone in this area yet.
It sounds pricey.
Mhm.
I'm
But
not sure.
yeah, but worth it.
Oh yeah. And can I just add, if anyone does get a high result with the either with the charcoal test that's free from the state or from the AirThings handheld electronic detector, it's always good to get a validation with
absolutely.
with the separate test. And
I absolutely concur. Before you jump to fixing an issue that might not actually be there, have that second data point.
And there are continuous monitors available out there, and they're really not all that expensive.
Tara, could I just ask, or I have a couple of quick comments?
Hi, Rich. Sure.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much, and for the person that just gave the presentation, Tom, terrific. I've been monitoring and kind of just trying to keep my ear to the ground about radon. And just a quick couple of things. There's a kind of a privacy issue with DHHS and giving them radon information. So if you're trying to sell your home, there's still a concern. I just wanted to kind of elevate that. Anytime you test something and you're not doing it privately, but you're sending it back to the state, it's a little bit of an issue. For me, I in order to keep my house with a wood stove, I have water on the stove, but I actually borrow somebody else's water that's not in my area that's got a lot of radon in it. So what I fear, and especially in Ossipee, is people use water and then they accelerate it as an aerosol and put it into their own house. And I think that's a big issue, especially for smokers, because obviously radon affects smokers, I think 40-1. And my dad and my mom were both smokers. And I would also say the shower, whenever I take a shower, because I know I have a lot of, the big thing, I'm not worried about radon in my water, because the bigger thing obviously is aerosol on a level of 200-1. And like you, Tom, I'm just a rookie on that. I mean, unlike you, I'm a total rookie on this, but I pay attention to it all the time because I'm in a big radon area. But I always keep the window open when I take a shower, even afterwards, just so it doesn't kind of become an aerosol in my house. And then the last thing I'll say is I had a neighbor who just got her and a radon thing in there, a radon contraption, and it was $4,000. And I think that is minimum nowadays. And when I saw your 1,500 to 2,000 in Terra, you said about 1,000 for Green Mountain. It is out of sight right now, and rightfully so. There's a lot of hardware, there's a lot of expertise, there's a lot of labor that goes into it. So don't go into it thinking it's going to be a cheap fix. It's a pretty expensive fix. And that's all I'll say. And thank you for bringing this in. I think radon's one of the biggest things in this watershed, next to gasoline stations in water protection districts. And that's all I'll say.
Thanks, Rich.
Just a comment on showers. If you have an exhaust fan in the bathroom, I think that might help.
Okay.
So I'm just going to echo that we haven't had to deal yet with any radon mitigation for water, but we do I work with Mark a lot to do private well testing for people to help get well samples out to people, the testing kits, and then Mark helps get them down to the lab in Concord. So if people do get to that point where they do have to test for radon, you can reach out and we can get you on our list to notify when we have another trip going down to Concord.
There's one question that came in through the chat, and it's Kathy asks, are water systems required to test for radon? And if so, how often?
I'm not
Mark,
sure.
do you know about that? I'm trying to think of public water systems. I would assume that that's one of the contaminants that they would need to test for. I know it's more of a concern when you have a drilled well, but public water systems, I would think, would have to test for that among all the other things that they test for.
The problem that 50 to 60% of us in New Hampshire who are on wells have is that there aren't any requirements, safety requirements. And so we really are pushing real hard for everyone to get their well tested every 2 to 3, well water tested every 2 to 3 years. Because there's other there's some contaminants that can be quite serious.
Yeah, so private wells, absolutely not required to test. Usually they're only tested when there's an exchange of, real estate, or you're buying a home or selling a home, if that's requested. So yeah, like Mark said, we're really pushing for people to test for it in their water as well. Any other questions? It seems like, did we get to everyone's in the chat?
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming, and hopefully, if everybody here tests their home and then tell one other person, we'll double that impact that we can have. And again, really appreciate it. Stay warm and keep those houses buttoned up, but also test your hair for radon.
Thank you so much, Tom. We appreciate all your work on this issue.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom.
So long, everyone.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mary.
Bye-bye.